we've talked many times about this idea of pastors as teachers of the nations and how important that is. But as you were talking and talking about the idea that we have to present knowledge to people, I think a lot of us feel that deeply when we hear you talk. But then when we read other folks, people who are not Christians, Richard Dawkins or Daniel Dennett or whoever, and for the vast majority of us, we know there's lots of those folks who we could not out-argue and that we're not smarter than. How do we present with confidence that this is knowledge when we're aware that somebody else could be talking with us and we would not be able to out-argue their position?
One of the things that's helpful in that situation is to begin to recognize the agenda that they're working on. And it will not take you very long until you realize that a major part of their agenda is to shut you up. And so they know how to work symbolisms that are provided by the institutions of knowledge in our culture that have defined the knowledge of Christ out of the domain of knowledge, officially. But then, many times, one who is not a scholar in that particular area simply has to know the history well enough to recognize that the position they are arguing is not one represented by humanity's thoughts through the ages. We are in a very recent time in this respect, where we have now become accustomed to thinking that faith is one thing and knowledge is another. And so we have people who live around the corner from Richard Dawkins who can put him in a corner and shut him up. And so it becomes a kind of contest that we have to be very careful about, or we'll come to despise him. And the thing that he needs most to hear is the effect of love and the life of truth in human beings, and then to look at what he purports to know and realize how little it has to say about what really matters for most human beings. And it's the inadequacy of what is presented by knowledge in the secular world to deal with the life of the people who occupy the secular world that is the revelation of the limitations that this viewpoint that sets the knowledge of Christ aside and says it's not knowledge is revealed. Now that's something that the community has to be working on. You're right in the midst of the community up there with Stanford. And that's an occasion where you can mix this thing up. And I would be hoping that you would bring in some of the people who are unbelievers from Stanford and let some others in the fellowship listen and talk, because it's only in the conversation that the deficiencies are revealed. And what is present now is the conversation has been shut down. And what we need are people, writers and teachers and speakers and all kinds of people who will simply stand up and initiate the conversation.